Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Mayor Karen K. Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 City Council meeting of September 5th, 2018. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Smith.
I am here.
Councilmember Rivera.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
And Councilmember Parlier.
Here.
Thank you. Well, welcome to our City Council meeting. It's always good to have the public engaging in the civic process. And tonight we have some students from Bakersfield College, from Professor Steve Holmes' class, and Marilyn Sanchez. Gades, would you raise your hand? Well, somebody left. He's not getting extra credit, whoever that was. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Have a great year. You're off to a great start engaging with us. At this time, Pastor Larry Black from Dominion Worship Center is going to lead us in the invocation. Pastor, we thank you so much for your involvement. I know that you and other faith leaders have been actively praying for some of the challenges that we face with homelessness, economic development, education. We really thank you for that. And then following the invocation, we have two students today, seniors at West High School, who are going to lead us in the pledge. First of all, Celine Martinez Salgado and then Ednisha Tucker. Both of them were chosen by their West High principal for their overall outstanding citizenship and scholarship and just being good students all the way around. So Celine was chosen for her 4.0 GPA and higher for all 4 years, and she's a member of the National Honor Society, California Scholarship Federation. She's also captain of the cheerleading team and a level 2 volunteer with the animal shelter, and she plans to attend UC Davis. Ednisha also has a 4.0 GPA and is a golfer. Do you play foot golf? That's like the latest. She's won she's won awards for her scholarship as an athlete and the special athletic emblem W for playing varsity golf for 2 years in a row. She's also a member of the National Honor Society, California Scholarship Federation for Dream Builders. She's an avid reader, volunteer hiker, and loves photography. So thank you all for being here. Pastor Black, at this time, would you please come forward and let's all stand, please.
Thank you, Mayor Go, for the invitation. Let's pray. Lord, you remind us that in 1 Timothy 1 that supplication, prayers, and thanksgivings be made for all men, for kings and all in authority, that we may live a quiet and peaceful life. We want to thank you for the Honorable Mayor Go and all the members of our city council that serve our community. We thank you, Lord, for companies like Amazon and other companies that have chosen Bakersfield as a home to do business. Lord, we pray for continued favor and that other businesses would also come and join our city. Lord, we pray you'd bless the businesses that are here. We pray for wisdom. James 1:5 says, if anyone lacks wisdom, to ask of God, who gives liberally to all, and it will be granted to him. So, Lord, grant wisdom to our board members and our council members. Lord, I pray that you would help them to give them wisdom facing the issues we have in Bakersfield. Grant strategies, ideas, solutions to the homeless situation, the gangs, budget issues. We pray for unity in our community and here among the members of our city council. We want to thank you for the decisions they make tonight and in the future, and we ask you to bless them all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Black. Thank you, Vikings. Go West High. Here are a few guidelines to help our meeting run smoothly. We request that you turn off your phones, and in keeping with council policy, council members aren't allowed to send or receive electronic communications during the meeting. Please be courteous in the use of cameras and videos. Applause is allowed during the presentations portion of the meeting, but it's not allowed during other parts of the meeting. For safety reasons and as a courtesy to others, we ask that you not have any signs. Thank you so much for your cooperation, and we thank you ahead for having a great meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first item?
Under presentations, item A, we have a proclamation to Colleen McGauley, Executive Director of Court-Appointed Special Advocates for Children of Kern County, recognizing the 25th anniversary of CASA in Bakersfield on September 22nd, 2018.
Thank you. Council members, would you say the number 2909? 2909. There have been 2,909 children who have had an advocate. 2,909 children who have been given a voice because of CASA. Unfortunately, 1,900 children are victims of abuse and neglect every day. But we are so fortunate in the 25 years of CASA that many of them have had somebody to be a voice for them. CASA has trained 1,111 CASA volunteers who have given over 277,000 hours of service towards our children in Bakersfield and our outlying regions. And during the last fiscal year, 207 CASAs served 415 children, giving them a voice, the most vulnerable. And so it is my pleasure to have Executive Director Colleen McGauley and her volunteers. She's going to introduce them. But today, it's my pleasure to be able to present the following. The mayor of the city of Bakersfield has officially recognized September 22nd, 2018 as the 25th anniversary of the court-appointed special advocates for children of Kern County in our city in honor of CASA of Kern County's vital role in our community and in recognition of its endless support and advocacy of the abused, neglected, and abandoned children involved in the juvenile court system, and in recognition of the dedication and resolve each volunteer offers by providing an unbiased and independent assessment of each child's welfare and environment, and in recognition of CASA's unwavering commitment to protecting our youth and uniting our community. Happy anniversary, happy birthday, 25 years, Ms. McGauley. Thank you so much. It's my honor to present this to you. And you go ahead.
Hi, everyone. The good news is I'm not asking for any funding for CASA of Kern County. I'm here with Mickey Heppy, our program manager, and one of our newer board members, Evelyn Young-Spath, recently of CSUB. And we have a few people in the audience, and I'm not sure if they were able to make it, but this is really typical. Of those 1,100 CASA volunteers, we do our work quietly, behind the cloak of confidentiality of juvenile court, and amazing things happen. When a CASA gets assigned to a child, over 90% chance of them getting out of foster care and into forever families. Mickey and I heard about CASA many, many years ago. I was in that first class in 1994. And I absolutely drank the Kool-Aid. I could not believe that a volunteer from the community could go into juvenile court up on Mount Vernon and make a dramatic change in the outcome of 3 little children's lives. Mickey joined us in 1996, and we were happy to get jobs at CASA. We have both said we would don't tell Evelyn, close your ears. We would probably do this for free because it truly is a passion for both of us and for our 15 staff members. I would like to say, many of you know about the grueling work of being a CASA volunteer, showing up week after week, being a consistent, caring adult in the life of a child who is confused, whose parents change, attorneys change, judges change, social workers change. Within 5 to 7 months, we are the most caring, consistent person in their lives, and it's just the glory of a volunteer that can do that. But we have other kinds of opportunities, and in the last, I didn't get timed, so that was probably a mistake. So I'd just like to say we have 2 other opportunities that have come up in the last several years. One is Family Connections, where we appoint a CASA and train them how to do internet searches. It's amazing who we can find, 25 to 30 lost relatives for these children, and they start the process of making healthy connections. We work closely with our partners at Department of Human Services because we want them to do the background checks and the criminal backgrounds that are checked. But we find families, and I think we have 3 children living with lost families today because of that work. And finally, we're doing some amazing cutting-edge leader in the state advocacy in terms of mental health and the medication management of our children in foster care. So we have short-term intervention cases, traditional cases, and in between family connections cases. So I make a plea for those of you who come to you and say, I want to get involved in something that's meaningful. CASA 631-2272. And we're just looking forward to having a waiting list of 0 and to serve all the children that need a CASA. So I just want to thank you for this proclamation on behalf of those advocates for 25 years worth of fabulous work. I say thank you.
And thank you so much. I've seen the passion that you've exuded and then your wonderful strategies. And indeed, you can change the future of a child forever. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
We have certificates of recognition to Allison Galinas, Community Relations Specialist, and Karina Ortiz, Community Relations Supervisor of the Bakersfield Police Department, recognizing the outstanding work of volunteers from the Bakersfield Police Department, Explorers, and civilian volunteer programs during the Denon Cleanup Project.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to let Council Member Chris Parlier do the introductions on this one.
Well, recently we did the Denon annexation, and I got to tell you, I was just so proud to see our youth with our Youth Explorers with the Bakersfield Police Department, along with our citizen volunteers with the Bakersfield Police Department. It just brings so much pride to our community when we see people willing to devote their personal time to help their new citizens, welcome them into Bakersfield from the county. And also, I want to give a real quick shout out to code enforcement, solid waste, and public works that were out there too. They just did a fantastic job, and I sure appreciate all the efforts. And this is really, I think, the kind of a cornerstone of how we're going to, a prototype of how we're going to do potential annexations in the future. And I tell you what, we set the mark. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councilmember. So it's my honor to be able to present this certificate of appreciation to the Bakersfield Explorer Program and the Citizens Volunteer Program in honor of each program's volunteers and their outstanding efforts to clean a recently annexed neighborhood located off Panama Lane and Denon Street, and in recognition of their exemplary professionalism, that would be you, and dedication to keeping our city streets safe and clean, and in recognition of their continued commitment to improving our communities by uplifting and assisting the residents of Bakersfield. So it's my honor. Let me present this to our Explorer. Thank you so much, Explorer, for being here. Stay right there. And then on behalf of our citizen volunteers, Ms. Ortiz. Thank you. And then would you like to say a few words? And if you would like to.
Thank you very much for the acknowledgement of our volunteers, and you're right, they are exemplary people who have a true heart for giving back to our community, and I think that's very reflective of us Bakersfield as a community. And so this opportunity, because our volunteers and explorers donate well over 15,000 hours a year for free in support of us as an agency and being able to better serve and effectively serve our community. We are very, very appreciative of this acknowledgement. We have some outstanding people who, for many reasons, just wanting to give back and participate and be a part of this community, are reflective of who we are as a community. So thank you very much for this acknowledgement. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Proclamation to Casey the Bull and Kern County Fair Chief Executive Officer Mike Olcott declaring
I am so
September-
excited. You're really here today, Casey. Come on down. Look who it is. You were sick last year, so we didn't get to have you here. Well, council members, this is the time of year for fried pickles, churro dogs. Have you ever had an ice cream wrapped inside a succulent churro with that little sweet crunch? What about stuffed chicken and a waffle cone? Or if you're really into Uncle Jesse from Full House, you get that opportunity to hear Uncle Jesse with the Beach Boys. But what a wonderful time of family fun. And it is my honor today. You are really excited, aren't you? It's my honor. The mayor of the city of Bakersfield, California, has officially proclaimed September 19th to September 30th, 2018 as Kern County Fair Days in our city in honor of the 93rd annual Great Kern County Fair and in recognition of the thousands of anticipated visitors who will pass through the gates of the fairground to celebrate the wonderful bounty of Kern County and enjoy the talents of its residents in this autumn institution, and in recognition of the opportunity the event offers for families to spend time together and exhibit one of the largest junior livestock displays in the United States, and in recognition of the continued support and outstanding efforts of local businesses in our community. The tradition known as the Great Kern County Fair will allow each attendee to remain fair friends forever. And I am so honored to be able to present this. Glad to have you here, Mr. Michael Olcott. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, and Casey, I don't know whether,
You want to speak?
can you talk? Well, you go ahead
wanna
and
speak,
stand
or you wanna
right
clap?
there. You clap.
Clap.
You clap. Go ahead and let,
Okay, thank you. Council members, thank you very much for having us here. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate the city of Bakersfield and what you do for us. As most people don't understand, we're a county property in the middle of Bakersfield, and we're a state agency. So I have a lot of different agencies always at my doorstep, so it's a lot of fun to deal with. But I can't thank you enough for all that you do around the outside of the perimeter. The streets look beautiful. Everything looks great. We're trying to keep the fairgrounds beautiful. We're beautifying it. The board has directed me to undergo some construction and beautification. This year, one of our exciting new things that we have is Casey's Farm. Casey's Farm will be about 1/3 to 2/3 of an acre of ag education. We're partnering with Grimm Family Foundation, Grimway, and also Bakersfield City School District. We have 2 schools right adjacent to us, Sequoia and Wayside, that don't have the funds for a farm. They're going to be able to use the farm there, and maybe Casa Loma too. There'll also be cooking stations like Grimway has out at the Grimm Family Foundation out on Buena Vista Street, or Buena Vista Road. So I want to thank you. We have lots of good food. We have lots of great entertainment this year. Again, Mayor Go said, you know, John Stamos is going to be here, which, okay. But he's going to be with the Beach Boys, and we just got notification of that. McDonald's is putting on a big show here for us. National McDonald's is going to be coming in. Let's see, what else do we have? Snakes, we have monster trucks, lumberjack show. you name it, we have it this year, and 450,000 people will come through the fairgrounds. And thanks to the Bakersfield Police Department for their efforts to get those people in and out of those parking lots, and also to our firemen and Kern County firemen and Kern County sheriffs that help us maintain the good order we have out there at the fairgrounds. So again, thank you for everything that you do. I can't thank you enough, year after year, what you do for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Let's take a photo. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public statements.
At this time, we'll receive public statements. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per topic. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, would you please give those to the clerk and she'll give those to the council. Please avoid any behavior that's disruptive. We're very interested and concerned with your issues. However, due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, the council can't take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. If you're here to speak on hearing item 10A, now isn't the time to speak. You'll be given an opportunity later when that item is called. However, tonight, staff isn't recommending any action on that item. So if there is anyone in the audience who wants to speak, you may do so later when that item is called, but the item will be continued to our September 19th meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the first speaker?
Pedro Ramirez regarding water use.
Welcome, Mr. Ramirez. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Pedro Ramirez. I'm a student at BC. Howdy, y'all. I hope your holiday went well. I want to speak to y'all about something very important, water. Very few years ago, I stood with many of my fellow community brothers and sisters at the Vaughn's Marketplace. We stood together to pray to our Heavenly Father for his help to end the drought we suffered. Luckily, things turned around for us. Droughts are a common thing nowadays. We should be smarter, more wiser conserving its use. We live in an arid region. We should act like we are in a desert and make certain sacrifices. We should only have lawns where needed, such as schools, playgrounds, parks, sports fields. Houses are being built here in Kern with both front and backyards. That is something that must change. In front of many business establishments grows grass is growing in their parking lots, along the side of their buildings, and often in our sight, gallons of water just running. That is not wise. We should attempt to conserve water to be wiser. We live in an agricultural community. The demands for water are great, and unfortunately, sufficient rain during winter to fill our reservoirs is never a guarantee. We must act. We can make a difference. Let us outlaw front lawns for houses that have front and backyards. Let us outlaw lawns at all places where they are not needed. Please refer this to committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Next speaker, please.
Marvin Dean regarding issues in Ward 1.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and the public. My name is Marvin Dean. I'm a resident of the First Ward, and some of you know I'm a candidate also for the First Ward. One of the concerns I'm here to, and I said I would be here to speak from time to time before this council on issues that affect the First Ward. I'm here tonight to speak about cleaning up our southeast part of the First Ward district. And I've given you photos of, before I say that, let me tell you why. We want to clean up the neighborhood so we can attract investments out there to bring real change out there, and also to help with crime. What I'm talking about tonight, it plagues into crime, and it doesn't do anything to attract investments into the area. And I don't think each of you council members in your ward would stand for this. So the pictures you see here, and I've counted, I went around the ward, and there's about 8 structures like this. This is in the 300 block of Martin Luther King Boulevard. And these buildings have been there, some of them have been there up to a year. These are half-burnt structures that are standing, unboarded up, unsecured, the top pictures. The bottom row is you drive through some of those alleys, like behind those apartment buildings on Martin Luther King Avenue. You would see debris, trash, all over the place. And this is not just in that area, it's throughout our ward. And we need to clean it up. And I'm going to ask my councilman, Willie, if you would help me take the lead on addressing this. We need to have a zero tolerance for this kind of stuff with code enforcement. Because again, it will not allow that community to have its rightful place in this city. And we need to clean up the community so we can bring the First Ward into the rest of the city as a true partner and bring investments out there so we can attract services out there. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It was something that my supporters asked me to come tonight and speak on. So I'm here and we'll monitor it and we'll see whether anything changed. But we're going to stay on it until something happens. This is intolerable out there. So please do the right thing and help us clean up our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Next speaker, please. Oh, yes. Is your button not working? Oh.
I'm sorry, I didn't push it. Where did the photos end up? Do you have them? Okay. You got, okay. All right, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Kathy Butler, Bakersfield Downtown Business Association, regarding downtown events.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Kathy Butler. I'm Executive Director of the Downtown Bakersfield Development Corporation, and I'm here also representing the DBA. Next week, we are going to be closing I Street for 2 big events. The first event is the dedication for the Portrait of a Warrior Art Gallery and the Taste of Downtown. And we're so excited about these events. I have more information for you. But I just left the Portrait of a Warrior committee meeting, and we are so excited because the artist that started this project in a small downtown in Texas will now be in Bakersfield for the dedication, to see what we're doing in Bakersfield, how that started there. So we're very excited about it. And this started as just an art gallery, and it's becoming so much more because those that have served have gotten involved, and it's really something special. And we're very excited about it. And so we have 2 big events, but we invite everybody to come downtown. The Taste of Downtown, we have 15 restaurants, band and entertainment, and the art gallery will be open that evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Next speaker, please.
Mayor.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Butler, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to the council. I want to encourage everyone to go to the Taste of the Downtown. I wasn't able to go last year because of the League of City Conference, but I heard it was a wonderful event, and so I look forward to another successful event for downtown. And also, thank you so much for your contributions to the Warrior Gallery, the Portrait of a Warrior Gallery at 1925 I Street. The committee has been working very hard, Mayor and council members, on this gallery that is creating portraits for all post 9/11 fallen service members from Kern County. And they have been working with their families in order to create these portraits and to create educational opportunities for all of our community. So it's a wonderful amenity for downtown, and I'm excited to see it open up next week. So thank you.
It really is amazing. I encourage you, like Councilmember Gonzalez, to come on down for the ribbon cutting and celebration. Next speaker, please.
Karen King regarding GET bus service.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening. Welcome.
How are you doing tonight?
Very well. Thank you.
And council members, my name is Cindy Parra. I am the current chair at Golden Empire Transit, and I am also the representative from the city who is, for your information, up for reappointment at the end of the year, so just letting you all know that. I'm here tonight. Also, we have Evelyn Young-Spath is here. She's on our board, and I'm here with our CEO, Karen King, who has a little bit of information on what's going on at GET, and we have some handouts there, fresh off the press, of information and a lot of other interesting things, so I'll give it over to Karen.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. In the handout that I've just given to the clerk, you'll find a hot off the presses today annual business report to the community, and that you'll see refers to this being our 45th anniversary this year, and we're very proud of that. Now, the report talks about the past, and I this evening want to talk about the future, some things that we have going on. One is we're doing a conceptual reimagining of the downtown transit center to see how we can make it fit into a new, vibrant 21st century downtown. We have 24 brand new buses coming online. We've received 8 of them. And the next time we order buses, we will be ordering battery electric buses because that new technology is coming to the fore. So we'll be transitioning our fleet from CNG to battery electric. In addition, you'll notice in your packet some frequently asked questions about microtransit. We're going to be doing a 6-month pilot project on microtransit, and you say, what's that? It is Uber Pool and Lyft Line meets public transit. It's demand response service that's technologically activated, so people will be able to call a small bus to their location to get door-to-door service. It won't be throughout our service area for the pilot. We'll be picking a small zone, but we're really excited about the potential for that providing a new and enhanced service to our community. So those are just a few things we've got going on, and we invite you to stay in touch with us. There's information in the packet how to get a hold of us if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. King. Thank you, Ms. Parra. I see Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. Thank you so much for presenting and for being here this evening, and thank you also for meeting with me on a regular basis since I've arrived on this dais to talk about the downtown station and other ideas. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to revitalize the downtown transit center. I also had a question. One of the ideas I'd pitched to you in the past was perhaps a special shuttle that would take visitors of downtown to Old Town Kern and vice versa. And I wondered if there was any more thought put into that concept.
We actually did a study to look at alternative services, which is where this idea of microtransit came from, and we had the consultants study a shuttle such as you're talking about. And their conclusion was that it would be very costly to operate, and if there was someone who could underwrite the cost of that service, then that would be an appropriate service to provide.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Parlier, we have additional comments, so
Don't run away. I just want to thank you. I had one of my constituents, Barbara Cleaton, last week request a bus bench by her home. She thought it was a safety hazard with people sitting on the curb by Wilson with their feet dangling in the street. I reached out to one of your staff members. They were extremely helpful and responsive, and I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. King, Ms. Parra, thank you so much for all that you do for our community. I know recently we did Stuff the Bus, and you gave away over 200 bags of groceries and many other kinds of essentials to people who face the challenges of homelessness and food insecurity. So thank you so much again for all that you do. Happy 45th anniversary.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under workshops, we have the city recycling program update.
Thank you. Mr. Fiddler.
Honorable Mayor and council members, Mr. Kevin Barnes, our Solid Waste Director, will be providing a presentation on the rapid changing recyclable market and the impacts it's having on our recyclable collection system.
Oh, this one. Okay, gotta get the right mic. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Kevin Barnes, the Solid Waste Director. We have been happily recycling for a number of years now, but we have some issues that have come up. You've probably seen them in the news. It has to do with the recycling market. And I am wondering why this slide is not advancing. Here, okay. Let's discuss this by first recapping the recycling mandate, our progress toward it, our current programs, and then we'll move into talking about the challenge that I just mentioned. That challenge actually has two parts. It's limited outlets for some of the materials, and it's higher costs for the markets. Then we can discuss options moving forward, which will be necessary. First off, we're going strong. The mandate is currently 50% recycling, and Bakersfield is at 58%. The statewide average has recently dropped to 44. It was up at 50 for a while, but things are happening and other cities are struggling, but we're going strong. How do we get to 58? We have a variety of programs you can see on a list here. I've highlighted two of them in red, the Curbside Blue Cart and the Curbside, or the Commercial Blue Bin, rather. Those are the focus of tonight's discussion because of the market issues that we'll get into. First off, we have over 100,000 blue carts out there in service. Everybody's familiar with them. Collectively, they handle about 12,500 tons per year of recyclables. It's fairly easy participation. Everyone's familiar with this. The variety of materials, although there's been a little media talk lately about what's in, what's out. The city has not changed anything. This material is all in still. Not so many people focus on the commercial part, but there are hundreds of these in use. We price them lower than the comparable refuse service, so they attract the businesses to use them. That helps out in achieving our mandate. So once we pick up all this mixed blue material, which ranges from bottles to cans to papers, plastics, where does it go? What happens to it? This is called a material sorting center, or you'll hear me say tonight, MRF. That stands for Material Recovery Facility. So we're not talking little blue MRFs, we're talking a big building. This is one of the two local MRFs. This is the MRC facility next to Mount Vernon. You can see inside it, a lot of material, a lot of things going on there. And on the bottom left, nice, tidy cubes to be sent out. Let's take a 1-minute tour through that MRF. We'll show you what happens to the material after it's picked up at the curb. So as you can see, it goes to a tipping floor where it's unloaded, stacked up. Again, this is not garbage, this is all recyclables. It's loaded onto conveyor belts, which go up to workstations where different laborers remove reject material. They start grading into different kinds of material. They're assisted by a variety of machines. Here's one that tickles out the small particles you see there versus the big particles. Here you have a quality control worker doing further clearing. And here in slow motion, you can see tin cans jumping up to a magnet overhead. This was dramatically slowed down. It's kind of fun to watch. And then there's a lot of manual sorting. Here's one person doing particular bottles. On the left at the top, you can see mixed paper that's going into a baler, being pressed into the cubes you see down below. They're cubed out, stacked up by commodity type, and they're shipped in usually overseas containers out from the MRF. This happens at both local MRFs in Bakersfield. And the question is, what happens next? Mostly, they go overseas. Why is that? Well, as the recycling industry progressed over the last 20 years, China was using up most of the material to manufacture products. So consequently, 60% of the world's recycling has been going to China for many years. However, this is getting to our problem tonight. The growing cities in China need space for their own recyclables. So the government over there has banned most of the imports as of 2018. And by the way, that doesn't have anything to do with the current tariff issues. This is before that. In fact, going back a couple of more years to 2016, that's when the first signs of trouble were, where there was kind of an oversupply occurring in California and most of the world. With new recycling mandates, more stuff got put in blue carts, more got sent to mills. Consequently, the markets got picky and began to pay less because they could be more choosy. So that started a trend in 2016, and you can see it here. Excuse me. This is the 6-year history of the Universal Blue Cart program in Bakersfield. You can see we used to be paid $65 per ton for the average mix of material. Over the years, it's declined a little. I mentioned in 2016, things got a little picky, so prices flattened out. But recently, with the Chinese policy change, we see negative pricing where we're actually having to pay the MRFs to take the material, because in some cases, they turn around and have to pay mills to accept it from them. They also have to put on extra labor at those MRFs to do a very, very clean job of sorting. Used to be a little loose, but in recent years with picky markets, it's had to really step up. So let's not panic. That's a 6-year downtrend, but now look at a 30-year example of cardboard pricing. Cardboard is a big commodity. It's had its ups and downs over the years. I'm old enough to have been in this game even longer than that. I've seen it do this. You can see that back in '90, it was lower than it is today. So we're feeling kind of a pinch and a crisis today, but if we keep perspective on the long haul, we may be able to talk about getting through it. So here I want to show just the effect of the market on the typical mix of material that we handle. The number column on the left, tons handled, is about 6,000 tons here. Remember, I said we pick up about 12,000 some odd. This is about half, handled by one of the MRFs in town, and that's how much they sorted out in a year. Notice, only 10 tons of aluminum cans, 2,000 tons of mixed paper. So anyone that believes aluminum cans pay the freight, they're mistaken. So over in the first box, we can price out from back when prices were more respectable. And you could see by doing the math that a MRF sorting this amount in a year could bring in over $800,000. By contrast, on the right, in lower market range, the same kind of material at lower prices bringing in a quarter of that. Now, it sounds like a lot of money either way, but remember all the equipment and people we saw working in the MRFs have to be paid for, and those MRFs easily cost over $1 million a year. So these revenues would only offset part of their operating cost. So let's get to what it does to the city's ratepayers. That's the important part tonight for you. What's the cost impact? We'll go through a little math here. 12,500 tons, and we're currently being asked to pay up to $70 per ton. That equates to the $875 per year. That would be a new cost that we have not budgeted for. Now, if we divide that over the entire refuse customer fee base in Bakersfield for all the trash service, that makes about a 2% impact. You might recall that typically we'll have a 1 or 2 or 3% inflationary adjustment some years to keep up with the price of inflation. This market impact alone is about that scale. It comes to about $4 and change per house per year, okay? So what would that look like compared to other cities? Don't try to focus on this graph. I'm going to zoom in a minute. But this graph is from the budget workshops, which we saw, where Bakersfield has a much lower refuse rate than most other cities. Here I've zoomed in a little bit. I've kept the orange in contrast for Bakersfield. The little blue tab we added symbolizes the inflationary adjustment we just made since this old 2017 survey, and the $4 or so impact if we were to cover this new market impact, say sometime coming up with a rate increase. Bakersfield is so fortunate to still be having lower rates than most every other city that we can survey. So we're very grateful for that. It is a bad situation, of course. Nobody likes to spend more money, but relative to other situations, we're doing well. We took a look at many other cities. We polled 25 of them. We read about dozens of them in all the news feeds that we have in the recycle industry. News every day, literally. Some are canceling programs altogether. Some are eliminating what I'll call loser materials. They don't have much value, so they try to cut those out. Some cities are paying increases to their haulers or to their facilities. Some, like us, are still assessing the situation. The bottom line here is it's in such a flux with things changing weekly in the market that everybody's kind of scrambling. So we don't have a real clear trend yet. So that brings us to how should we move forward knowing all this? We do have a situation where, as I said, we did not budget the large number of dollars for the downturn. The dramatic downturn occurred after the budget was produced, so we would need to cover that with some adjustment. So one obvious choice would be discontinue the program. Probably not a good idea. The state actually had a piece of legislation recently to give cities relief from the 50% mandate if they could not find a place to take their materials. That legislation was defeated. It did not pass. So as far as our Sacramento regulators are concerned, we're still supposed to recycle the 50% plus. Second option could be to eliminate some of the loser materials. You know, a mustard bottle is not worth as much as a beer can. But there are some pros and cons there. I'll discuss those at more length in a minute. And of course, the third option is maybe weather the storm, waiting for new developments. We'll talk about that too. So what about eliminating certain materials? It might eventually reduce cost. That's a good thing. But if you look at all the disadvantages, it might not be cost effective. Public education can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. For example, if we mail out one flyer to each household, the printing and postage is $50,000 per flyer. How many of those would we send out? How many TV ads? How many billboards? We could spend a lot of money on that to just cut part of the materials out. On top of that, the MRFs still have their labor there to catch the reject material, because I doubt that everyone in town would get the message and act on it. So the MRFs would not be able to cut labor right away. Then we have the high cost of reversing the message if our markets come back. And we say, oh, red light, green light, put this back in, we could spend more money. Then we might have conflicting messages too. We would have one for sure because the blue carts have pictures printed on the lid of what's supposed to go in them. If we send out flyers saying, ignore that, some people might get confused. And then we have to consider the county right around us. They have a very similar program, almost exactly the same. And public service announcements, billboards, et cetera, would be very confusing if the two jurisdictions didn't follow the same suit. So we've spoken with the county. They, at this time, don't plan on cutting back on materials. So it's just something, as we throw all this in front of you, something to consider. Of course, then we have uncertainty with taking loser materials out, say now, to cut cost, but what if we have to cut more losers out later? We could repeat the cycle. It could be very expensive. So let's talk about maybe weathering the storm. What would that option look like? We are seeing some signs of change. We're seeing in lots of news that companies and mills in China that are not able to take that material in anymore are looking to move to other countries to set up shop. That's happening. Of course, it's not an overnight thing. It takes rearranging the global shipping network to the ports, very, very large ports in China. Things like that have to get rearranged. So it won't be a quick change, but there are signs of it coming. There are some large investments in U.S. mills. Read about $300 million investment in a paper mill in one part of the U.S. Read today about 2 Chinese companies buying American paper mills. So things are very dynamic. Things are changing in the global market as we speak. One good thing is that some cities are pulling out of the race, cutting back on recycling, and that leaves the few available markets for those that are still in the race. So that could be us. We have MRFs that are very recently developed. They're modern. We have our MRC one put together by our private haulers. It's one of the latest technology MRFs in California because it didn't come on 20, 30 years ago. It came on only a few years ago. That's encouraging because it can keep up in the race better than some older ones. We have BARC, the local organization who is going to have job training personnel regardless of the MRF. So there's a labor force that needs to be there anyway. So Bakersfield has some unique situations and conditions that might make it worthwhile to stay in the race and weather the storm on this. So I'd like to summarize by just saying curbside recycling is obviously desirable to the public. As I said, the regulators expect it as well. Cutting out certain materials could be counterproductive, could cost more overall. Allowing the MRFs to continue taking the existing set of materials, filtering out what they can and cannot market, letting them apply their skills to try and develop markets could be the most expedient, most effective. Both of the MRFs have discussed that with us and they agree. One thing I can guarantee you though is that more ups and downs lie ahead. I've seen this cycle over and over and over. It is the worst I've seen in history, but we do have signs of change coming. So with that, I hate to be just the bearer of bad news here, but we do have a problem. We need to address it. We will need direction from council to say perhaps amend our small contracts with the MRFs to be able to continue to operate with them after September, or we need to make other changes that we discussed. So we'd like to come back 2 weeks from tonight with whatever appropriate action the council desires. And with that, I'd answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple questions. On the cardboard, it's still selling for $74, but your $70-some a ton that you're paying, that includes cardboard, or?
Vice Mayor Smith, that's a good question. That is a raw market commodity price. The machinery, the baler, the shipping, all that comes off of that $74. So that's why the mix of material is in negative territory right now. negative pricing.
So the $70 is everything mixed together?
That graph, the 30-year graph, where cardboard is currently 74, is what you can sell the clean bale to at a market right now.
No, the 70 that we have to pay for people to take?
Yes, the 70, even, that is what we're being asked to pay.
And that includes the money we're able
Yes.
to get from cardboard or whatever?
That's correct. That's after they sell or move the material otherwise. That's what the MRFs are going to ask the city to pay per ton. Yes.
So we do separate it out. They separate it all out, and so they're selling the cardboard somewhere, and they're trying to get rid of the plastics and stuff.
That's correct.
So the paper and the cardboards aren't the real losers at this point, or?
The mixed paper has been a big problem lately. The MRFs actually have to sometimes pay to take that. For a while in June, one of our MRFs was unable to sell it, period. And they were facing the option of disposing of it in the landfill. So we're getting right down to the wire on that.
But plastic is difficult?
Plastic is difficult, yes. They're not bringing in much money at all. In some cases, they're a negative price as well.
And glass?
Glass is very low value, always has been. It's very, very heavy, very dirty, and rarely pays its own way.
Okay. There's some other questions, but I will make the motion to receive and file and look forward to talking some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. That was a really good presentation. One thing that occurs to me is we're sending signals also about the environment. We sort of have I think, a cultural value of cleaning up the environment that's pretty established in our community, and I really think the country. Everybody is making that effort. So it would be a mixed signal to discontinue something like this, unless we truly couldn't afford it. But I did want to clarify, on the rate, do we have an ordinance that allows us to pass on certain operating costs, and that accounted from going from 200 to 207?
Councilmember Freeman, the cost recovery ordinance in the city is there, but after you consider that, there's another step in California's Proposition 218 for fees based on property parcels. And since ours is a parcel-based billing, we have to have that hearing process. So that is part of any rate adjustment.
But our current policy allows cost recovery for the operating expenses, and is the addition of the $4 to maintain the recycling, is that a discretionary item? That it seems to me if the state mandates that, it isn't very discretionary if we have to maintain a recycling program.
One would think.
Okay, so it's discretionary in the sense that the council would have to approve it, but it's a law that we have to do it.
Yes, it's a state mandate that we need to continue the program, and not to complicate it, but we're above the 50%, that's great. But if we were to, for example, cut it just altogether, the state would then, we might stay above 50% on the numbers, but the state would say, you have to have the program, because they measure you in numbers and programs.
Okay. And finally, to cut to the chase here, the total amount of discretionary decision-making here is $4 a year per household?
Per household, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And just to make sure everyone's aware, that would be within the Refuse Enterprise Fund. It's completely independent from general fund issues. It's not your council contingency fund or anything. We do have in the Refuse Enterprise a very healthy reserve, so we can go ahead, if you desire, make our budget adjustment, continue the operation, cover it with reserves, and then probably square up next time there's a rate cycle.
Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. couple of quick questions for you. I agree that we should weather the storm or kind of wait and see at this point. But besides the enterprise funds, you know, we have a Measure N that's out there asking the voters of Bakersfield to potentially vote in a 1-cent sales tax. If that was to happen, is there any way that potentially in the future, besides a rate hike to the enterprise fund, we could subsidize something out of general fund revenues?
Councilmember Parley, I think that's my question rather than Kevin's. It is not on the ballot issue. We have pledged that we would adhere to those issues specifically identified in the ballot language and the support documents relating to that. So I don't believe that would be appropriate.
Okay, I thought we were still going to come back and have a discussion regarding certain items.
Councilmember Parley, if I may further, yes, will there be 100 policemen or 110 policemen? Will there be X number of firefighters or Y number of firefighters? How much money will go into the economic development? Those things will come back. But again, essentially, we have made a moral promise to the voters to adhere to the items listed, and there is nothing about any of our enterprise funds operations in there.
Okay, well, I still think it's open to maybe further down the road, but, well, let me throw this at you. So the senior subsidy program that we used to have, is there a possibility that we could do something with that too?
Councilmember Parley, the city attorney can speak up, but that's an equity issue under new California propositions that mandates that we do not have differential charges. If you're asking if we could subsidize senior citizens with the new sales tax, I would say a very strong no. In my opinion, it's a contradiction in our pledge to the voters.
Well, I didn't say new sales tax revenue specifically, but general revenues. But that's my question. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we go back to the 50% slide and how we get there? If all of this recycling is only 3%, and then the vast majority of recycling is lawn waste, is that correct? So the reason we're able to get to the 55% is because we're a suburban community and lawn waste goes, instead of to the dump, the landfill, it goes compost and recycling.
Yes, that's one big reason, yes. Another big reason is we're not just a suburban community. Bakersfield is the commercial industrial hub for the Southern Valley. The proportion of commercial refuse here to residential is very high. So things that were done in the commercial realm over the last 25 years to recycle programs, and not only that, but waste reduction programs, learning how to do the industrial jobs with less waste, that's a big component here that is not really measurable in numbers. The end result is, as you see, but I think to your point, how much is the Blue Cart program? It takes a little over 7,000 tons per year to move our needle 1%. So at 12,000 plus tons a year, the Curbside Blue Cart program in front of the homes is about 2%.
And lawn waste would be how much?
It's up around 30, 33, yes.
Construction waste is?
Construction waste is very large. Don't have a number on that, but there are construction waste things that are reaching farther out than even the city's own programs, because you've got concrete crushing yards that the city fostered once upon a time.
And that gets recycled?
Yeah, and that all counts from back in the day.
Right.
Yes.
But we're not having a problem recycling those items still.
The same blue bin program applies to the materials in the commercial blue bin, but that's a very small
Right,
fraction
so
of
construction waste is recycled without problem still?
The wood waste portion of the construction wood is a problem. We talked about that in the last year and a half. You may remember contract amendments where we had what we called the wood chip crisis. The biomass plant in Delano shut down. It used to use all the wood for energy. Now it doesn't, so now we have to get creative and do other more expensive things with the wood. We are making it work, and we're within budget now, but it is a problem that we manage.
Good, thank you.
See no other comments. You have a motion to receive and file. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Under workshops, item B, advocacy rules regarding the local tax measure.
Madam City Attorney, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Ginny Gennaro, City Attorney. And tonight I am going to talk to you about the do's and don'ts by public officials, and that would be for advocating either for or against ballot measures. And I think it is particularly relevant in light of the sales tax measure that the city has on the upcoming November ballot. Probably in general, too, that November is an election for all of us, and to the extent that any of you receive the Western Cities magazine, the September edition of that magazine has a very good summary of ballot measure activities and use of public resources, what you need to know. If you don't receive it and you'd like a copy of it, let me know, and I can certainly make you a copy of that particular article. So we start off again with the background and fundamental law that I'm sure all of you are familiar with, which is that a public agency and official may not use public resources for campaign activities or materials. There is an exception to that, and that exception is within both the California Elections Code as well as case law, and that allows a city to actually use public resources to draft a ballot measure and for other collateral activities related to the development of that measure. But when we look to the law on this topic, the law has a time frame upon which it applies, and anything that is done prior to the ballot measure being placed on the prior to a ballot measure being placed on the ballot is looked at one way by the courts, and then once a council places a measure on the ballot, the courts look at it a different way. So in general, as you can see from the PowerPoint, the risk of violating those advocacy laws is actually lower for the activities engaged in by public officials prior to a measure being placed on the ballot. Now, in our particular case, as you know, the council voted back on June 20th of this year to place the sales tax measure on the November ballot. That was after the retention of the polling consultant, FM3, back in December of 2017. And after the retention of the communication and outreach consultant, the Lou Group, which was done in April of 2018. So once that measure was placed on the ballot, again, that line of demarcation then is the June 20th, 2018 date, the risk of violating the law changed. And so if we are ever in the unfortunate situation of having ourselves looked at by a court, the courts are going to place more scrutiny when analyzing whether those activities relate to governing or whether they relate to campaigning. So we have some general principles, again, that I think you're all aware of, which is that council members, and that includes commissioners, whether they're elected or they're appointed, as well as city employees, we're limited in the ability to advocate. Certainly, the city may not use public funds or resources to influence voters or urge passage or defeat of any type of ballot measure. However, we may provide relevant, accurate, impartial, and balanced presentation of the facts. And again, the key point here from the courts is that the content of that message, it's not the purpose, it's the content as to whether or not that message constitutes information or whether or not that information constitutes being an advocate. So what is allowed? We all have a First Amendment right. We may certainly take a position on the measure, but we need to make sure, however, that the campaigning is done on a private time away from City Hall or when not otherwise engaged in city business. We need to make sure that we separate official city work from campaign work. And if you have the ability and you're working in your capacity as a council member, we need to try to be sure that you only provide facts and information. When you're campaigning, we need to be clear that although you are a city official, that you are not representing the city. Do not campaign in city facilities or solicit from other city officials or employees. And it goes without saying, of course, that you use personal, not city resources in which to campaign. This is clearly not allowed, and there's case law on each of these bullets. Anytime you're going to use vote for or support, cast your ballot, vote against, defeat or reject, or sign a petition for or against, those are items that case law has found to be, again, in violation of the advocacy rules. Also, what is not allowed when we talk about public resources? Of course, anytime you're campaigning within city buildings or other facilities, if you're using city phones, computers, copiers, city paper, and particularly for city staff, we want to make sure that city staff is not getting paid for time on duty if they choose to campaign. So much I think of what I've said sounds straightforward when I say it, but when you start to apply it and use hypotheticals, I think that's where sometimes it gets a little bit fuzzy. So there's a couple of hypotheticals that I have for you. And again, it's interchangeable in terms of whether you use council members or, again, you use public officials. But if a city council member X announces at the next city council meeting, I would like the council to develop a brochure to send to all residents, reminding them to cast their ballots for the measure. I mean, clearly, I think we can all agree that that is a do not do. We cannot tell people or ask people to cast their ballot. That is an express term of advocacy which is prohibited. And certainly the city could not pay for this type of mailing. Second hypothetical, City Council member X makes a personal contribution to the approved Measure A campaign and attends a party for the campaign. Absolutely allowable, no problem with that whatsoever. City officials may certainly make personal contributions in public appearances on personal time, supporting or opposing a measure. Third example, City Council member X sends an email from a city account titled Vote for Measure A. Again, clear expression of advocacy here. That is a do not, that is a city email system, it's a public resource. And again, the city official really should send this email from his or her personal email account. Getting a little bit more into the gray area. So Measure A is the topic of a neighborhood meeting. Everyone in the group knows that Councilmember X is on the City Council, but Councilmember X is at the meeting and she says that she's there as an individual. She's not there in her capacity as a City Council member. She continues to make a presentation explaining why she thinks that the group should support Measure A. Again, this is acceptable conduct. Why? Councilmember X is clearly on her own time. And I think probably the most important is that she's gone out of her way to clearly distinguish to the group that her appearance there is not as a city official, but she is there as a private individual, and that is always a good practice to take. So let's do the same example, but ask ourselves, now the council member is on a radio or a TV show. Again, every effort should be made to clarify that one's position is from a personal or a business perspective. Let's face it, when you're asked to be on a radio or a TV show, you're probably being asked because you're a city council member from the city of Bakersfield. So again, make that effort, just like in the previous example, to clarify that your position, if asked, is that as a personal or from a business perspective. How about if you decide to walk the ward or you decide to walk the city boundaries and you decide to wear your city council shirt or you decide to wear the pin that the mayor has given you from the city of Bakersfield? I would tell you that that's not a good idea. It's only acceptable if you are in a re-election campaign and you actually have an opponent and your opponent is asking you what your position is on this particular sales tax memo. There is a specific exception that would allow that council member in that instance, again, to express himself or herself and let the individual or the public know how they intend to vote on that issue and, again, to advocate. But again, if you're walking a ward with your council shirt and a pin and you're not in for re-election, it can be seen, the appearance of impropriety, that again, you're advocating for a particular measure. So it can be very fuzzy, particularly when you're determining whether or not you're on duty or off duty. So when in doubt, again, our advice is that you give information only, and you should, of course, feel free to speak to the city attorney's office. So in summary, one may take a position supporting or opposing the measure, but do so on your personal time. When you're acting in your official capacity, and I think the key here is, or when the appearance of acting in your official capacity is there, provide information only. Never use city resources to advocate one way or the other. And keep in mind that the law being what it is, sometimes the line between legal and illegal is not clear, and so each case will be factually specific. And so with that, Mayor, I am open for questions.
Thank you very much. Just a question about public officials that are limited on their ability to advocate. Certainly, our council members and I, we're here listening to you, but what about the many employees and commissioners that we have? How is it communicated to them that what you're sharing with us is very important to observe?
Mayor, again, valid point. They should be informed as to what I am sharing with you tonight. I do believe that the planning commissioners will be receiving a similar presentation at their next meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I have a couple motions to make on this subject and one request. To your point, Mayor. A motion for the city attorney's office to prepare in a suitable format the information contained in the presentation and any other information that would be appropriate, and disseminate that information to all management, department heads, supervisory personnel, with questions to be directed to the city attorney's office. That's my first motion.
Any discussion on this? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to be clear. So the motion is to have this PowerPoint disseminated to all staff?
Not necessarily the PowerPoint, but in a suitable format that was easily transmitted to people within the organization.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else on this? You have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Go ahead
Thank
and
you.
continue.
The next motion, that both the city manager's office and the city attorney's office be invited to any and all meetings, conferences, discussions, communications, or other activities regarding any measure on the November 6th ballot.
Vice Mayor.
Could you restate that?
That both the city manager's office and the city attorney's office be invited to any and all meetings, conferences, discussions, communications, or other activities regarding any measure on the November 6th ballot.
So if there's a campaign committee for or against the measure, the city manager has to go to every one of their committee meetings? The city's not involved with it.
Well, first of all, I don't think the city manager could go there.
Right.
That the city manager and the city attorney's office, in their official capacity, will both be invited to any and all meetings, conferences, discussions, communications, or other activities regarding any measure on the November 6th ballot in the city, in their official capacity within the city.
I'm still confused. There are committees for and against, and you're saying that we want to vote to send them to
No,
those
we are not
committees?
voting to send them outside. We're talking in the city, in their official capacity, in their employment as a city official. They're not going out and campaign a headquarters and participating in that. I mean, they could do it if they want to. But if the city has a meeting,
Yeah.
that both city manager and city attorney's office would be represented at that meeting. Nowhere else, just if the city has a meeting. City staff, consultants. Because we do have more than just the sales tax measure on the November 6th ballot. We don't, but there are other ballot measures that affect the city on the November 6th ballot. One of those is Prop 6.
I'm not clear as to what the motion really is.
If I understand it, and maybe the
yes,
city
yes,
manager wants to
sure.
understand it, but I'm understanding Councilmember Ware to say that if it's a meeting that originates within City Hall, whether it's from the city manager or the city attorney's office or any staff member concerning a measure on the November ballot, that we both be invited.
And that's it.
I would request further clarification because I believe, and you speak more rapidly than I can write, so I
Okay.
may have gotten it wrong, but you talked about any communication. Did you not? Or did I hear or not copy it down correctly?
All meetings, conferences, discussions, communications, or other activities regarding any measure on the November 6th ballot.
First, a point of clarification. My office, department heads, et cetera, are not allowed to go to an advocacy group.
But we're not going to an advocacy group at all. It is,
Okay. When you talk about any form of communication, the police chief is invited to speak at on a talk show, and the talk show host brings up a question that pertains to the ballot. Am I supposed to be there? Jenny's supposed to be there?
no.
Then I'm not understanding how any communication.
If there is a meeting in City Hall and it is discussing items on the ballot that are of importance to the city, whether it's a sales tax measure, it's Prop 6, items on the November 6th ballot, that both your office and the city manager's office would be invited to participate in those meetings, conferences, discussions, in your official capacity as city manager and city attorney.
Okay, I think I still have the floor, so I will give my opinion on the motion. I believe that the city manager and the city attorney handle their day-to-day business and understand what the legal ramifications of doing something they should not be doing, and I do not believe that we need to micromanage their meetings or tell them where they need to be when. So I am not in favor of the motion. Thank you.
This is not micromanaging at all. They're both simply invited to attend and participate.
Councilmember Freeman.
Councilmember Ware, are you saying any, do we mean, my question is discussions and meetings between whom? Is it employees of the city we're talking about? If city employees have a meeting, whether it's on-site or off-site, is that
If there is a meeting between, if the city manager is going to have a meeting discussing one of the ballot propositions, then the city attorney would be invited to that meeting.
But if just an employee met with two other employees to talk about it?
It's nothing to do with that.
Well, I think we have to wordsmith more because, and then you went on and said any discussion. That means by the water machine, water cooler, two people had a discussion, they'd be in violation of your policy. So
Is that,
you said any discussions even. I think that's going a little too far because people are going to get together and over lunch and talk about these things. That seems to be, they have the freedom to do that. If it's advocacy meetings, I can understand that someone's getting together to advocate a position and holding a formal meeting. I don't think that would be allowed anyway. So again, I'm sort of, I'm not sure how to monitor the type of policy you're requesting.
Well, if the city manager's not there and/or the city attorney is not there, if it's just employees talking, then this wouldn't apply to them. It has to do with the city manager and the city attorney. These are higher level discussions.
So if the city manager holds a meeting or the city attorney holds a meeting is what they call.
Both of them would be invited.
Yeah, if they hold the meeting, if they call the meeting, not if,
Or if they're involved in a meeting that they have called or they have an interest in pursuing the meeting.
okay, if Mr. Fiddler has a meeting, if people within his department want to understand the ballot issues better and at the staff meeting they discuss it, do they have to call, not to advocate, just, discussing it, clarifying, do they have to call the city attorney to come down and sit with them?
If the city manager or the city attorney is having a meeting to discuss ballot propositions, then they would both be invited. Not employees, not.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Okay. Now, you're not talking about the chamber or anything like that?
No.
You're talking about within City Hall. Now, would it
City
be
Hall.
a scheduled meeting that would be publicized? Is that?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. So you're not giving an example of what you mean, other than, so,
I'll give you an example of what I mean. So city manager wants to have a meeting with the consultant that they've hired. In that situation, city attorney's office would be invited to that meeting. Does it mean the city attorney has to go? No.
right, okay, invited is a key word also. So,
That's an instance. It doesn't go down to employees and it doesn't go down that far.
so a consultant, that type of a meeting, a discussion then?
Yes.
A discussion. Interesting.
Anything further, Councilmember Sullivan?
Thank you.
Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. I think as a city council and as the folks up here, it's incumbent on us to direct our staff in a clear manner, and this discussion has been extremely unclear. So I'm ready to vote, and I think we have a motion, so I would call the question.
You have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Motion fails with Councilmember Smith, Rivera, Gonzalez, and Freeman voting no. Councilmember Parlier abstaining. Councilmember Ken Weir and Councilmember Sullivan voting yes.
Thank you.
Okay, one more motion, and this one I believe is fairly clear. Motion for both the city manager's office and the city attorney's office to review the city website and other city digital media currently and on an as-needed basis to ensure city communications are consistent with the information that was presented this evening.
Councilmember Smith, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you repeat that again, please?
Motion for both the city manager's office and the city attorney's office to review the city website and any other city digital media to ensure city communications are consistent with the information presented this evening.
Anything further, Vice Mayor?
No, I don't have a problem with that.
Councilmember Freeman.
Could we refer to the document the city attorney presented us as consistent with what was presented, to clarify what it is we want to be consistent with? The presentation made by that wasn't included, so I think we need to say, not just presented this evening, that document, that
The
presentation.
information that she presented this evening.
In that document, okay.
Anyone else? You have a motion, please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Okay, and lastly, I have one request. We've hired another consultant to assist us with the sales tax measure, and I'm requesting staff to provide the council, the whole council, with the following. Why the city needs another consultant, and specifically why this consultant. Exactly what the consultant will be doing that we could not do ourselves. And since the city is basically limited to presenting factual information, and we possess the factual information, why do we need a consultant to assist us with our message?
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Was that a motion, or was that
No,
just a referral for
I
information?
just request that of staff to provide to the entire council.
Okay. So that's just a referral for information. Thank you. I will make a motion to receive and file the report.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions for the city attorney. I appreciate the presentation, but I want to tease out a few of the examples that you provided us.
Sure.
Number one, the example regarding walking the ward with the council shirt and pin.
Right.
A council member who is walking the ward on her free time without a council shirt, without a council pin, is practicing her First Amendment rights. Is that correct?
Under those limited hypotheticals, I would say yes. Now, if that council member were to knock on the door, right, knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm council member X, and I'm here to," I don't know what it is they're here to do under your hypothetical, but with the information you provided, I'm comfortable with your conclusion.
Well, the assumption is that she's campaigning for the measure.
If she's campaigning for the measure, and again, she doesn't indicate that she's a council member, I agree with you. It's not advocating.
Regardless of her reelection campaign?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. The other question I have is the hypothetical regarding City Council Member X announcing at the City Council meeting that, quote, "I would like the council to develop a brochure to send to all residents reminding them to cast their ballots for the measure." Should that council member make a recommendation to city staff that they send out a brochure without that specific language, quote, "reminding them to cast their ballots for the measure," and just providing information regarding the implications of the measure or whatever we've done so far, is that within the city's purview?
I think it's a slippery slope. I certainly think, though, that the city manager's office has done that to the extent that some of it goes out within the Gen Info, and I've been comfortable with what's been sent out in the Gen Info.
But if a city council member was to make a motion to send out a postcard to all residents within the city regarding the measure,
The mailing is what is going to get you with the public resources.
even if it's an information-only item?
Again, I would not be comfortable with that. The council can always overrule me, but I would not be comfortable with that.
And why is that?
Because you're spending public resources on really advocating.
Not advocacy.
Okay.
Just information similar to what school districts do up and down the state with regard to school bonds.
If another council member then said, I'd like you to send out another brochure and I'd like you to give the facts why the measure was not a good idea, and the council voted in favor of that and spent the same amount of money, then sure, I don't have a problem with it.
I'm not asking to give our opinion as to whether it's a good idea or
Right.
not.
Just facts.
I'm asking to provide the facts of the current state of affairs.
Understood, and my comment to you would be that if the same thing were done equally for the other side, only facts, we need to have a response for that.
I'm not asking for one side or the other. I'm asking for a simple factual postcard that should be good for both sides. I mean, we're talking about being transparent to our community regarding what we're pursuing. This should be an unbiased mailing, an information-only piece.
I think I've given you my opinion, Councilmember Gonzalez.
And I'm asking you the basis of that opinion.
The basis of my opinion is the fact that you're spending taxpayer money, and there are some taxpayers that are not in favor of that particular measure. If you were to do it equally across the board, the facts in support and the facts against, I don't think it would necessarily raise an eyebrow. Let's say it wouldn't raise as big of an eyebrow.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Yes,
could I
sir.
add something? While it is common practice, as you are aware, for cities, school districts, community colleges throughout the state, had an internal discussion among my staff about it, and we decided that in Bakersfield it would be counterproductive. And so it is my office's recommendation that we do not do such a mailer. And we had no plan whatsoever to do such a mailer. Just, it's not addressing the legal question you're asking of the city attorney, but we felt it would create, it would anger some people to the point that it would be counterproductive, so we didn't want to do it.
Okay, thank you.
If there is nothing further, we have a motion to receive and file. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. We have a request for a break, so we will reconvene at 7 o'clock. Okay, let's reconvene and continue with our exciting agenda. We'll see which of the council members makes it to his seat first.
Or last.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent calendar items 8A through 8Y for approval. A staff memorandum has been received regarding item 8F, providing additional background material related to the resolution in support of Proposition 3. An additional memorandum was received regarding item 8F, transmitting correspondence from Dennis Fox. And staff has requested item 8S be removed from the agenda in order to address additional questions from the contractor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move for approval for items 8A through Y, accepting item F, which Councilmember Freeman wants to talk about separately, and I would also move to remove item S.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman?
Yes, regarding 8F, the Proposition 3 bond issue, I just felt this is not the same as approving a contract for some grading someplace, and that we should discuss it separately and be sure everybody's familiar with this bond issue. I was a little familiar, but I had to look it up, and upon looking up, my concern is that, well, really two things. One, I feel if we're going to call it's a water bond, commonly referred to, the greatest need our community, I think our state has, is for water storage. There's a little bit of money in here for water recharge and for maybe fixing a dam. I think it's one dam. I'd be really in favor if we were building dams and storing water and trying to solve the water problem in California, which can only be solved with water storage. But this is $8.9 billion, and it's not addressing, except in a minor way, water storage, our greatest need, especially this community. So that's a concern I have, and that it's all being done with debt. Apparently we have a $12 billion surplus, but we can't find money for these types of programs, all of which are worthy if money is, if we have the money, all of these things are great. But apparently it's not a priority in Sacramento, so now we're going to borrow the money, and it says we will pay back double this amount because of the interest over 40 years. If I read that right, that means my little granddaughter, who's 7, when she's 47, that'll finally get paid off from this. And I just don't think that's a good use of public resources. If we have the money, let's go ahead and do all of these things if we can. But to encumber people for this many years with new debt in a state that I think has too much debt, I just have a lot of concerns with this particular proposition. So say my piece. If other council members want to comment, that's fine, and then we can just vote individually on whether the council, the resolution of the council, supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members? Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor Go. So this item is on the agenda because I had asked for it at our last council meeting. I agree with Councilman Freeman that I think really the biggest issue the state has relates to water, though I'm not sure I've reached the same conclusion that storage is the only crack in the cog. And so I think when you look at what something like Proposition 3 proposes investing money in, a lot of the money is actually for communities that have issues with groundwater to begin with, which I think if you pulled a lot of communities up and down, especially the Central Valley, you'd find that is one of the biggest issues they face outside of, say, storage or a supply. I think that's why you find that you've got folks on both sides of the aisle supporting this particular item. You've got environmental groups and the Chamber of Commerce and labor groups and other folks behind this particular item. And I guess the only thing I'd say is, there are things that are worth investing in, certainly for the benefit of, say, your granddaughter or even my future daughter. And I would suggest that if things like this aren't prioritized and we don't invest the money now, then water quality and water supply for your granddaughter or my daughter or whoever 40 years from now is likely to be seriously jeopardized if we don't take the types of actions that stuff like this particular proposition suggests we do. So having asked that it come to the council, I will move that we approve this particular item.
Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought when I read through this, there was only about $600 million that was actually allocated for water storage and groundwater storage. The rest of it was going to other things, but groundwater storage and sustainability was about $600 million. Is that, anybody answer that?
That's what I recall in reading the detailed analysis also. Just $600 million, I think round number is the right number, out of $8.9 billion.
So it really is not accomplishing what we need and others need up and down the valley. $600 million out of $9 billion, that it's not a big investment in what this county needs for sure. And I know there's other counties and cities up and down this valley that really could use that money to benefit them in a much greater capacity than what's being offered in this water bond. So I have to agree with my colleague, Mr. Freeman.
Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just give a quick little breakdown because you're right. Storage is not the only item this particular bond would fund. And so I think Councilmember Freeman is correct. But I do not think that the only answer to our water woes is water storage. This particular bond allocates $500 million specifically in the Central Valley to ensure drinking water access for communities up and down the valley. It includes $250 million for wastewater treatment for those communities. It includes $50 million for agricultural water conservation in the Central Valley, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I guess my point in raising that is we're foolish if we think storage is the only problem we face when it comes to water, and we're fooling ourselves if we think investing all our money in storage is going to fix the problems we face now and into the future.
Anyone else? You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with council members Smith, Rivera, Gonzalez, and Parlier voting yes, and Councilmember Ken Weir, Freeman, and Sullivan voting no.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Hearings.
Our next item is the public hearing. Although staff is not recommending any action on the hearing item tonight, before I open the public hearing, I'm going to go over the presentation time policy in case somebody would like to speak. Each side will be allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers, so it's important that you identify yourself, make your statement quickly so others may speak. We'll hear statements from those opposed to the staff recommendation, then we'll hear from those who'd like to speak in favor of the staff's recommendation. If there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the wall behind me which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone and identify yourself. After 14 minutes, a yellow light will come on. At the end of 15 minutes, a red light will flash, indicating your time is up, and quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be answered until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give those to the clerk and she'll provide copies to the council. Please be courteous to others who wish to speak. Unless there's approval by the majority of the City Council, there's a strict 15-minute time limit for all those in favor or in opposition to staff's recommendation. Madam Clerk, would you please read the public hearing item?
I'm sorry, before you open this, I have a conflict on this item, so I am going to leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please read the item.
Public hearing to consider a resolution ordering the vacation of an alley running east and west and bounded by 19th Street, R Street, 18th Street, and Q Street in Block 253.
Thank you. Mr. Fidler.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this request comes from Sage Equities Real Estate. They're requesting the vacation of the alley to facilitate a 53-unit apartment complex. At this time, staff recommends the public hearing be open and continued until the next City Council meeting of September 19th to allow time to complete some of the easements that are necessary for this project or this closure.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in support or in favor of staff's recommendation? Seeing none, we'll continue the public hearing at our next meeting. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Council and mayor statements.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a referral. I've been discussing accessory dwelling units with staff for some time, and I would like for that to go to Planning and Development Committee at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman?
Yes, I have a referral to staff through Mr. Tandy on our favorite subject, CalPERS. I'd appreciate it if you could poll or contact what you would consider our peer cities. Probably not people much below 100,000. Maybe there's 5 of them, I'm not sure. You know, Stockton, Sacramento, Bakersfield, Riverside, whatever. Whatever you would consider kind of peer cities, similar sizes and challenges, not the big ones, on how they're meeting the challenge of making the CalPERS payments. You know, are they, have they been cutting services over the last few years, freezing personnel, things that we've been doing? Have they had sufficient tax revenue that they haven't had to do that? Do they think next year they're going to start cutting? Have they got some creative solutions that, you know, we haven't thought of yet in simply making payments? I think at one point someone was discussing, gee, if you could make your entire pension payment at the beginning of the year, I know that's like 42 million, but hypothetically, if you could, you'd save all the interest during that year, and that might save you 3 or 4 million. That's pretty significant if one could do that. But has anyone come up with any creative strategies to help reduce their costs legally? And what challenges are they facing? Did they raise their sales tax? Have they already done that? They're already at 8.25 or 9.25. I think the council would appreciate hearing, you know, what have other people done and what are they doing to deal with this? It's pretty much a statewide issue challenging everyone, but just to educate us a little bit on what have other cities done, or, you know, in order to meet this challenge. And if you could come back to us in, you know, a couple of weeks or a month within that time frame and just report back to us if we learn anything that could be helpful. Okay? Thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. I'd like to join my colleagues and make a referral as well. In light of the recent studies on pedestrian fatalities in our community, I'd like staff to review the possibility of amending the municipal code to prevent pedestrians from occupying and loitering in public medians, which obviously presents a potential safety issue for public safety and for pedestrians.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I want to thank staff for the cleanup effort of 35 encampments along the river. That was very much appreciated by many in our community. And what I particularly noted was that we actually took into consideration what was appropriate for homeless persons, to give them advance notice, to work with our community partners such as Flood to try to help them get the services that they needed. So thank you very much. And then also thank you to Chief Martin and BPD. There recently was a community meeting at Compassion Christian Church. Chief was faced with some very difficult questions, very candid and transparent responses. And Chief, thank you for your desire to reach out into our community, and for all the residents who participated in a very difficult discussion on hard issues. Thank you all for being there. If there is no one else who has any comments, we will be adjourned tonight at 7:16.